Let's check in and see how Democrats are doing in Kentucky. Let's check in with Charles Booker. Charles Booker is contesting Rand Paul for Senate in Kentucky, and he had a great inspiring ad to bring us together. How did he do that? Well, he invoked a rope and the hurt feelings from the past to bring us together in 2022. I'm going to play clips from this ad. You might have heard of it. The ad is Charles Booker with a rope around his neck. He's portraying himself as a victim. What is more inspiring than this?
Lynching was a tool of terror. It was used to kill hopes for freedom.
So he is invoking all of these things that some people, I just don't subscribe to it. I read the history and learn from it, but I can understand people read this, look at it, and look at the history of using a rope to unlive people, and it's triggering. So Charles Booker is here to save the day, to bring us together. And it's a great ad. I will not knock him for that. It's great marketing. I'm talking about it. I would never talk about him other than something crazy like this. He's not going to beat Rand Paul. This isn't about contesting Rand Paul. It's about making a profile for yourself so you are part of the Democratic establishment, no different than Jamel Hill or Nicole Hannah-Jones or Ibram X. Kendi. You find a lane and maybe you'll get on TV. Maybe you'll get a gig. You become a face. So you do this bidding of your master. That's the irony of this ad. And I saw people in the comments replying to this on the ad saying basically variations of, "You're so stunning and brave. You're basically stunning and brave for this, Charles. Charles Booker, you really got people in their feelings about this." Bruh, I can't speak for other people, but I'm not in my feelings. I'm laughing at you. It's 2022. And this is what you're running on. We've got all kinds of craziness going on in the world. The U.S. is sending money overseas for a war. Russia allegedly said, hey, if you guys keep doing and giving military weapons to Ukraine that can reach Russia, then we might have to holler at you with some missiles. And all that stuff, inflation and gas prices and all those pressures on common people that affect us all the same, no matter if you're Steph Curry, light-skinned, or me, dark-skinned, or whatever else. We all got the same issues on different levels and in different variations. It doesn't matter. So I'm not triggered by it. I'm laughing at you. You're silly. You think we're stupid. It triggered me into laughing. But I could picture the Babylon Bee headline for this one. It's like, black male in 2022 runs on anti-lynching platform as a part of the pro-lynching party, who is still racist, the Democrat Party, of course. So he's running as a Democrat. They were the pro-lynching party historically. They are still the racist party in a different way. Now it's anti-racist, but they're full-blown racist still. And the pro-lynching party is the party I'm running through. And he put a little clip in the video of the rope that they brought to the Capitol for J6. And that was completely out of line, but that wasn't for a black man. So he's doing all this misinformation, disinformation, trying to trigger people into thinking Rand Paul is a racist. I could see the Babylon Bee headline. It writes itself. I said, thinking critically is looking at who's trying to empower you. That's part of it. It's not everything, obviously, because people will try to pretend to empower you like Booker does, and it's not true. So you have to find out, are they trying to empower me? Are they being accurate? This is something that we have to admonish, we have to make fun of, and it does. I hate to say this, it does come on black Americans primarily. Non-blacks can't take the lead on telling Charles Booker he's wrong here. That's the beauty of their system. They drag you into identity, even if you don't view it that way. But let's look at the ad and break it down and see, wait, what's really going on here?
Our Commonwealth, I have become the first black Kentuckian to receive the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate.
First of all, I don't care if you're black or not, because obviously I'm black, you're black, and we don't work on the same wavelength. So what does that have to do with anything? What do you want, a cookie? I really couldn't care less that you're black, because right now you're against me. You're black and you are harmful for our country, in my opinion. And Charles Booker wasn't always like this. He has really turned. He used to be more class based. I could do a different video on him, and I already followed him before this ad on Twitter because he's a very good communicator. But I don't care if you're black. That's why I liked Kathy Burnett. But when she used the black stuff, and I understand why she did it, she was trying to reach people. So just like me, I talk about race, I'm trying to reach people. But the way she did it, she was like, I'm a black woman running. I'm like, I can ignore it because I understand what she's doing, but I don't like it on the populist side or the fake populist side, like you see here, where he attacked Rand Paul disingenuously. Politics has this where you do these fake attacks where you know how you portray your opponent isn't accurate. But when you have a noose around your neck as a black man, it's like we've taken this to a level that's just unacceptable for me. Nothing illegal, but if we don't rebuke this, then it's going to keep escalating. He's basically, so why didn't he come out and just say, I think Rand Paul is racist? He didn't do that because he knows that's not his position. But here's how he attacked Rand Paul.
My opponent, the very person who compared expanded health care to slavery. The person who said he would have opposed the Civil Rights Act. The person who single-handedly blocked an anti-lynching act from being federal law.
So after he talks about the anti-lynching act that Rand Paul was against, he shows the rope to just really drive the point home. But notice he didn't say it. Why didn't he just come out and say it, Charles? Well, if it's so stunning and brave, say what you really mean. He doesn't want to because he doesn't want to get into that. So he is really basically attacking Rand Paul. The first one he said was about the healthcare, universal healthcare, well, Medicare for all, that type of thing, single payer, government run healthcare. Rand Paul, if you don't know, he's the son of Ron Paul, and Ron Paul is one of the most famous libertarians of our time. Rand Paul has the same type of leanings. So it's not a racist comparison. It's a comparison towards freedom. So what's more important to compare to freedom than slavery? So it wasn't a racist comparison. Here's what Rand Paul, how he explained himself.
I'm a physician. That means you have a right to come to my house and conscript me. It means you believe in slavery. It means that you're going to enslave not only me, but the janitor at my hospital, the person who cleans my office, the assistants who work in my office, the nurses. If you have a right to their services, basically once you imply a belief in a right to someone's services, do you have a right to plumbing? Do you have a right to water? Do you have a right to food? You're basically saying that you believe in slavery. You're saying you believe in taking and extracting from another person.
And what Rand Paul is sticking to there is that term of I have a right. That is a very specific thing. And you'll hear that on the left. People I respect on the left say you have a right to housing. You have a right to health care. And it's a powerful thing on their side. So you can disagree with Rand Paul, but you understand what he's saying. And I land with Rand Paul on this, even though I am for universal basic income, for example. I used to be for universal basic, Medicare for all, until the government said, I want to force a needle in your arm or I'm going to fire you. And that's what Rand Paul is talking about. He's trying to educate you. Now, he's not the most articulate. I will not argue that. But that's what he's saying. So imagine if government ran healthcare and there's no private option. That's their dream world. Say there even is a private option and you just can't afford it. So the only option for you is the government ran healthcare. They could legally at that point force you to take a needle in your arm or kick you off of it, and they'd have a lot more control.
First of all, I think we will need vaccinations in the future, but also I'm concerned that the compliance of the population with the recommendations of the experts will not be very high.
It's a supply and demand thing. It's not about do I need it or not. It's about I need to move this product, and I need people who are against it out of the way.
We knew that there is a very fanatic group of anti-vaxxers.
So if they're all for government-run healthcare. That way we can mandate it or kick you off, especially if there's no private option. So what would you do? Charles Booker completely represents Rand Paul's position. No context at all.
The person who said he would have opposed the Civil Rights Act.
The second part that Charles brought up is that he would have opposed the Civil Rights Act. This is, again, another libertarian position. And I'll give you an example of how they try to play you. I got into a discussion with somebody on Twitter where I said, I am now for decentralizing the federal government. It's got too much control. It's gotten way out of hand. I do not want them to have any more power. Actually, I want to disband it legally through the political system with people who believe in small, limited federal government. So the power of everything is left up to the states. That's why we're having all this argument over the Second Amendment. We're having all this argument over abortion. We don't even know how to define a woman. We need to make those decisions come down closer to the people at the state level and get rid of the federal government. Or I don't know the logistics of it. You'd have to get a army for people, states to pool together. But all decisions left up to the states. So what they do is they say, oh, wait, I was talking to this person. They said, oh, well, do you want the decision of slavery to be left up to the states? And I said, yes, I want every decision of everything to be left up to the states. Somebody said, do you want interracial marriage to be left up to the states? And I'm like, are you hard of hearing? Can you not read? Yes, I want that left up to the states. That's what Rand Paul is saying. I want civil rights. I don't want that. I want that gone and left up to private businesses. So I was like, wait, they can't separate. My wife is white. I'm obviously not anti-interracial marriage. I'm saying the decision should be left up to the states. Do you think any state would repeal it? I don't know. I don't think so. We don't have any states that are pro-slavery, anti-interracial marriage. I'm not aware of that. But even if there were, I say it's left up to the people. The people will decide. I don't think the people would go that route. And even if they did, that's even more reason why we shouldn't be sharing a union on these fundamental issues. That doesn't mean I'm pro-slavery, you asshat. That doesn't mean Rand Paul is pro-segregation, pro-discrimination. It's a principled argument about private companies. And Rand Paul's position is, if we leave it up to the private market and get the government out the way, if you have a company and you say, I want no this identity, no that identity, no this identity, then obviously you're cutting down your customer base, and a company that would say, I want everyone is going to succeed. So you can say you agree or disagree with that. I don't really have a problem with the Civil Rights Act of 64, but misappropriating his position into implying that he's a racist with a rope around your neck is disingenuous, bruh. And then we come to the anti-lynching bill. Democrats love to do this. It's anti-lynching. Why wouldn't you be against it? Queen Josie of All the Liberty tweeted about this back late last year, or August last year, that here's part of the problem with a bill like this is that, and I don't know if this applies to the one they passed recently, but here's an example of the problem. A couple years ago, a black woman slapped 3 Jewish women on the New York subway. The lynching bill is so far-reaching, it would send her to prison for 10 years. Does the punishment fit the crime? There is always more to a bill than its feel-good title. So you've got to flesh these ideas out. And Thomas Massey, who voted against the bill as well, states the Rand Paul and my position as well. I am against the bill. Well, number one, you've got to think about this critically. Is lynching a problem right now in 2022? No, obviously not. So what is the purpose of it? The purpose of it is more government power. Thomas Massey said, 1, the Constitution specifies only a handful of federal crimes and leaves the rest to individual states to prosecute. For me, I want all the power to the states. So I'm good. I agree with that. No need to get a federal bill to empower on this anti-lynching. That's not even a problem. And the title of the bill doesn't even tell you what the real bill is. He says, 2, the bill expands current federal hate crime laws. As soon as you say the word hate crime, now the power is with the person who defines hate. How are we defining? Why don't we just have a crime? What is a hate crime? How do you even describe something like that? That is opinion. It's not objective, it's subjective. What you think is a hate crime might not be what somebody else thinks is a hate crime, and that's not in the Constitution. So how do we have a federal law defining what a hate crime is? The bill expands current federal hate crime laws. So I said I hate these high-waisted jeans.
Are you looking for the perfect gift for mom this Mother's Day? Introducing Mom Jeans, exclusively at JCPenney. Mom jeans.
That some women wear. If I say I'm not a big fan of those high-waisted jeans, is that a symbol of hate? Defines the word, defines the crime. And he says a crime is a crime and all victims deserve equal justice. Adding enhanced penalties for hate tends to endanger other liberties such as freedom of speech. Of course, that's what it's about. So if I'm not anti-MAGA, am I a hate person? You could define it like that. Lynching a person is already illegal in every state. So what are we even talking about? It's already illegal. Passing this legislation falsely implies that lynching someone does not already constitute a criminal activity. So when he says Rand Paul's against the anti-lynching federal bill, we already have laws that make it illegal. Rand Paul's not saying to repeal those laws in the state. He wouldn't even have that power, but he's not saying that. Number 4, this is probably the biggest one that I saw. The bill used the word conspiracy. And what does that mean? Were you thinking about it? Were you thinking about a hate crime? Or did you talk to something? Like the bill creates another layer which could be enforced over broadly on people who are not perpetrators of a crime. And if you saw what happened with J6 and how they got hemmed up in DC, this gives them more power. If you do the wrong thing in a blue area, their interpretation of all this stuff will always land against you, just like Michael Sussman. If you don't know what's happening, you should care about that. A DC jury would never go against Hillary Clinton. Sussman worked for Hillary Clinton. Durham was chosen by Trump. So no matter what happens in the trial, they're not going to interpret anything in the favor of Trump. I'm going to end with this. Charles, anybody can put things on the backdrop of ominous music and make it sound profound, and you did a good job with it, but I want to give a different perspective of how clown world you are to run as a Democrat on the platform that you're running on in 2022. You're trying to put fear in people like it is the 18th century. The Democrat Party has a history with racism, and people say it's a different party. It's not a different party. They are using different tactics to accomplish the same thing. 7 Democratic presidents owned slaves between 1800 and 1861. Between 1840 and 1860, there were 6 Democratic Party platforms supporting slavery. From 1868 to 1948, there were 20 Democratic Party platforms that either openly supported segregation or were silent on the subject. And if you look at, in Denver, we saw the oppressed people only playground night. Basically, it's like black or oppressed groups only type of stuff. We've seen that in Seattle. I did videos on that as well. They are pro-segregation right now. They just want to have control of it. The Jim Crow laws that they say Jim Crow 2.0 in Georgia, which obviously was proven false, that mandating segregation in all public settings, who did that? It was passed by Southern Democrats, the same ones that your president right now was really warm and cozy with, and they helped him into power to stay in D.C. for about 50 years. In the post-Civil War era, the Democratic Party and the Triple K had a very close relationship. I've quoted this guy before. Eric Fauner said that the Triple K became a military force serving the interests of the Democratic Party. And that sounds like what they're doing with this anti-racist stuff. It's the same thing, just flip the script, because what worked back then isn't going to work now, but you need to accomplish the same thing. Democrats are the ones that oppose the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, the ones that banned slavery, overturned Dred Scott. They were the ones that opposed giving black Americans the right to vote. The Democrat Party. Democrats opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1866. They opposed, it was the Republicans that were backing that. The Republican Congress passed that with a veto over Andrew Johnson, the Democrat. Democrats opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1875. That was passed by Republican Congress. Even going back that far, Democrat Party's 1904 platform used sectional and racial agitation to condemn the Republican Party's protests against segregation. And they're doing this because they were in the South and they came out of this whole Civil War and slavery, and they still had that mentality. Between 1908 and 1920, there were 4 Democratic platforms that were silent on the issues of blacks' segregation, lynching, and voting rights. All Democrats. At the direction of Democratic President Woodrow Wilson, Democrats segregated the federal government. The Democrat Convention of 1924, held in New York's Madison Square Garden, has been dubbed by historians as Klan Bake. Hundreds of delegates present were members of the Triple K, which was so powerful that a plank condemning Triple K violence was unwaveringly rejected. To celebrate, some 10,000 of the hooded Triple K group staged a massive rally complete with burning, you know what they did, and calls for violence against certain people. Democrats created the Federal Reserve Board, passed labor and child welfare laws, and created Social Security. This is all under FDR. But the programs were created as a result of an agreement to ignore segregation and the actual rope that you're talking about with black people. Thousands of Democratic local officials, state legislators, state governors, U.S. congressmen, and U.S. senators were elected as supporters of slavery and then segregation between 1800 and 1965. In return for election support, 3 post-Civil War Democrat presidents, Grover Cleveland, Woodrow Wilson, and Franklin Roosevelt, agreed to leave the issues of segregation and the rope stuff unaddressed. 3/4 of the opposition to the 1964 Civil Rights Act that Charles Booker used in his ad, 3/4 of the opposition came from Democrats, Southern Democrats, as did 4/5 of the opposition in the Senate. That opposition included such figures as future Democrat Senate leader Robert Byrd, someone who your president is very familiar with, of West Virginia.
There are a lot of people who wrote these eulogies for Senator Byrd in the newspapers, and I read a bunch of them, and they mentioned that he once had a fleeting association with a Ku Klux Klan. And what does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. He was a country boy from the hills and hollows of West Virginia. He was trying to get elected.
Was a former Triple K and the Tennessee Senator Albert Gore Sr., father of Al Gore, Democrat. The Birmingham, Alabama Public Safety Commissioner Bull Connor, who infamously unleashed dogs and fire hoses on civil rights protesters in the 60s, was a member of both the Democratic National Committee and the Triple K. I'm not done yet. In the 1960s, this is through discoverthenetworks.org, credit to them. In the 1960s, President Lyndon Johnson launched a massive expansion of FDR's New Deal welfare state. Let's go over to the Huffington Post because it's a leftist organization, a cabalist organization. But before Trump, things were a lot different. They used to allow contributors, people who were well-known, accomplished, to write on their platform to have different opinions. For those who are younger, believe it or not, you actually had platforms that promoted people who disagreed. So you actually had conflicting views. HuffPost would have conservative people or libertarian people or establishment people, and you would just put your opinion on there. I know it sounds crazy, but that used to happen. So I'm going to read the quote from the Huffington Post. They put a disclosure on here that's hilarious. It says, this post was published on the now closed HuffPost contributor platform. Contributors control their own work and posted freely to our site. They closed this down. They don't want this anymore. They don't want views that go against the cabal posted on their site anymore. I'm surprised this is still up. This is from 2011, way before Trump. If you need to flag this entry as abusive, send us an email. So what's the article? The article is the Democratic Party's two-facedness of race relations. How long will the Democrats continue their absurd charade, all while claiming Republicans are racist? Meanwhile, the Democrats are the party with an equally bad history. I'm going to end with the quotes from Lyndon B. Johnson. This quote here is alleged in a book. It's hard to find because it's just like a hearsay quote, but let me show it because what we know of Lyndon B. Johnson and what we know of the Democrat Party, this is proven to be true or accurate. It's based. Allegedly, Lyndon B. Johnson said, I'll have those niggas voting Democratic for the next 200 years. And here's the larger quote from it. And this one is confirmed here. These Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days, and that's a problem for us, since they've got something now they never had before, the political pull to back up their uppityness. Now we've got to do something about this. We've got to give them a little something, just enough to quiet them down, not enough to make a difference. For if we don't move at all, then their allies will line up against us and there'll be no way of stopping them. We'll lose the filibuster and there'll be no way of putting a break on all sorts of wild legislation. It will be Reconstruction all over again. Charles Booker, I would love to talk to you about this stuff. Let me know what you think. Take care.